This is Zettelcast, brought to you by readers, writers, thinkers, and teachers from Lillipub, along with our partners in thought, our Zettelkastens. In this show, we share discoveries that our Zettelkastens have shown us.
There you go.
And compare notes on how we're using this marvelous invention in our creative work. Thank you for joining us.
All right, book.
Let's do it again.
All right.
Episode 30, Building Connections.
All right, so welcome to the Zettelcast. I believe this is episode number 30, and I'm Mel Jeffcoat. I'll be hosting today. And for our first topic of discussion, we're going to follow up on a topic from the last time I hosted. And in that topic, I challenged everybody to pick some idea that they wanted to implement in their Zettelkasten but had not done yet, and go ahead and make a start in implementing it. And it's been about 6 weeks since then, so I just wanted to check in with people. If you could talk about what it is that you chose to do. Are you still doing it? How has it worked out? Just give us an update. So, who would like to go first?
Well, I could go first. What I talked about in episode 24 was the fact that I treat my bib cards almost as though they're main cards in a couple of ways. One is that I create a tagline that incorporates not only something about the book itself or the source itself, but why I want to engage with it, what I want to get out of it. And I create a tagline out of that, and I index that tagline in my regular index the way that I index everything else. And I continue to do that. It definitely adds more effort to thinking about reading a book someday. But that's exactly what I need. Because I need rationales for choosing. So what I have, so I'm still doing that, but I'm increasing my ability to be more selective. So one is, like Kathleen, I'm now much more solid on the habit of don't start reading a book without having created the bib card with all of those elements. Right? At least know and have written with my own hand, why do I want to read this? Now that is very challenging for a book that somebody just says, you ought to read this. And it's sort of, sometimes it's like, well, his words is good enough for me. Sometimes it's not. So I happened to be taking a course recently that was intended to be based on a particular book, and then the teacher through the days of the course started throwing in references to other books that he intended to incorporate in the overall class in a kind of a improvisatory way. Now, why he was going away from the original book and pulling in these other sources, only he knows. I have my own idea about what those things were meant to supplement. Maybe that, using the original book as kind of a foundational book around which other books can comment. But you have to pull in your Samuel Adder skills in order to figure out, all right, well, here's this book. I don't want to just say, I want to read this because so-and-so said to, because in this case, I'm not sure of the entire provenance of that book. So you have to be able to do the kind of systematic skimming that Samuel Adler advises in order to just look at it and say, what does this book purport to be about? So that has this whole process of can't start reading without having a bib card, and the bib card has to have a tagline, and the tagline has to indicate why I want to read it, really makes me more demanding of the books that I choose to read already. So that's good. Now, the other thing that I wanted to share, because many of the books that I have selected have to do with the Roanoke Project. So I'm getting a little bit out of the um, Zettelkasten proper, but this is a satellite system, and it is in my binder where I keep all my scraps about Roanoke. So I'm going to share my screen and share what I've done here. And what you're looking at here, this is my binder, my Roanoke binder. And this is a printout of a little worksheet, a log, an analytical reading log that I created to follow the Samuel Adler process for analytically reading a book. And so what I've got here are all of the taglines of the books that I have selected, and there are more of them, that I want to read as foundations for the world of Roanoke or ways to help me write it. And then I'm keeping track of what part of the Adler system of analytical reading have I completed. And the systematic skim and the superficial read, I'm just counting those as I've done it. I don't have to prove I've done it. I believe myself. But once I get into really deciding I'm going to go further with the book, then I follow his process of creating an outline, stating what the problems are, coming to terms with the vocabulary in the book, what propositions the book presents, the arguments for them, and how I have verified and validated them. Now, that's as deep as you would want to go with something, and I won't necessarily go that deep with everything, but this is helping me figure out what have I got here? And now I have what I haven't done, and so I can indicate here I did outline the memory code, and it's on page 2 of my bib cards. And there will be other things where there will be main cards probably. But this worksheet for other people who want this, it's available on LilyPub. It's a PDF that you could download if you are coming to LilyPub anyway. And otherwise, I also have for my own reading Kanban, which I'll now stop sharing my screen. And behind me, those things that I just padded are like little column headings of the same thing. All the little icons that say this is the skimming, this is the outlining, this is the coming to terms. And so as I'm taking a book through those processes, I'm still using my Kanban to track the way that I am doing that.
Very
So
cool.
Fantastic. Well, I definitely wanted Julianne to go first because last time in episode 24, I went first and very happily conveyed my system for working with bib cards and then had my mind totally blown by Julianne's. So forget that. I'm doing Julianne's method. And I immediately began doing everything that she described, especially the tagline and indexing the tagline. But I didn't get too far down the road with that before I realized that A, I want to do this always. I never want to not do this. And B, I still want my title index.
Mm.
So I went back to adding to my title index, and I'm happy to say that I'm now working on alphabet letter D. So I'm systematically, when I have a little corner of time, I'll work on that because it's fairly mindless. And I have a certain weekly Zoom call that, you kind of can listen to with one ear and if something's really good, you perk up, and otherwise you got some free space there. That's my time to work on my title index. Well, I have another factor in that title index, and that is a discipline. So this is something that I came out of this whole process is that when you're making a big change to a Zettelkasten, and I've done this before, I never have time to make the big change all the way through the way I would want. So what I try to do is incorporate a dual practice. One step is gradually working through the change. But the other one is every time I do something new, I follow the new pattern. And the way that's working out for me with my title index, I'll just show you a certain card. And this is the card for all of the things that I've taken note on for a certain author that I'm following, whose name you may actually recognize from this group. I've become a tremendous fan of his YouTube series on Llull. Oh my gosh, if you're not looking for that, look in the show notes. There's a link to it. It's spectacular. And what I'm sharing with you is that whenever I add a new entry to an existing card, I make sure that whole card gets title indexed. And because it's off in the alphabet, way past D, where I'm actually systematically working through, I put a little dot in the corner. And that just tells me that, well, when I get to the M's, because I just do it, well, actually to the J's, Mel Jeffcoat, I won't have to do this when I know it's already done. So every time I touch an author card, I index all the titles on that author card and mark it. And otherwise, I'm gradually marching through my list of author cards, getting title indexes to all of them. So yes, I'm continuing to do both. Thank you so much, Julianne. I really, really love it. And another practice that I have here that this card shows, if you look closely, I've got 2 entries for turning the page. The first entry was the entry I made when I read the book the first time, with the purpose of getting to know Mel's work. And the second time, just recently, after watching one of the videos on discursive meditation, I wanted to go back and read about discursive meditation and see what I missed the first time reading through, and I missed a lot. So I went back through and made another bib card to do a second reading with a more narrow purpose to learn all I can about discursive meditation. So now with these 2, I can review both sets of bib cards, one that just skimmed the whole book or read it lightly, and the other one where I just zeroed in on discursive meditation. So,
Very cool.
thanks.
What you just said reminded me of something that I wanted to predict about my own process. So by anticipating why I want to read a book on very scant input, I am leaving open the option of creating a completely other tagline on the book on the bib card after I have read it.
Mhm.
And so the bib card can get indexed twice, and who cares?
Mhm. Yep. Yeah.
Well, before I give an update on my project, which doesn't have anything to do with bib cards really, I do want to share a recent innovation that I've done with bib cards. And that was dealing with videos on YouTube specifically, because I had just been making a specific bib card for each video that I wanted notes on. But since I wasn't necessarily watching them in order, then if they were related to each other, then it was just getting too complicated and confusing for me. So what I've started doing recently, if it exists this way in YouTube, if the videos are in a playlist, then I treat the playlist as the work, and each of the videos as basically chapters in that longer work. So that way I have all of the notes that are related to, this particular series on one set of bib cards. And that way, and I have the individual titles, so I can go back to any particular video that I want to revisit, but it's all together. And I started doing this with Kathleen, your example with Mortimer Adler, of actually working through your book. And I'm really loving the way that it keeps everything together, and I know where to go to find the next piece. So I think that if you're using something where somebody has put their videos into a playlist, it's really great to treat the playlist as the work.
Like that.
Yeah. Well, my experiment project from 6 weeks ago was to work on, basically, I have a project section of my Zettelkasten, project specific for the different things that I'm working on or have worked on. And I was specifically working on my newsletter section because well, there really wasn't anything there, and I wanted to start linking for each of my issues of my newsletter, linking to cards that I may have used as inspiration, making a note of all of the sources and books that I used. It exists. I have that at the back of each newsletter, but I wanted to have it on card form because at this point, I'm 10 issues in, and I'm finding myself referring back to previous issues more and more frequently. And sometimes that involves a lot of paging through, like, where did I say that? So I'm trying to get this stuff onto cards so it's more easy to find. So I basically have like the title of each newsletter, a list of the books that I used, and where the drafts can be found, and which story I used, or a description of the story that I used to open it. And I haven't managed to do cards yet, but there will be a resource card of links to the rest of my Zettelkasten. And I haven't put as much work into it as I would have liked over the last 6 months. I have been adding to it a little bit, but I've definitely feel the need for it even more as I go along. So it's definitely something to keep working on, and I think it will help me a lot.
Well, Kathleen, your practice of kind of retrofitting opportunistically
Mhm.
is a really nice one, I think, for not having the overwhelm of, oh my God, I need to do all this stuff. It's just, find a way to keep on doing it. In it, in software architecture, when you are taking software that was architected in one way and completely changing it, even though people are still using the software, so you need to change it while it's still a product. There's a term for that called strangler fig. Which refers to a plant that essentially has a symbiotic relationship with with a tree, and it ends up kind of consuming the whole tree because it gets onto there when the tree is dying anyway, I think is kind of how that works. And then you end up with this entire edifice that's just this strangler fig supporting itself. It's a really cool metaphor.
Very interesting. Very interesting. I have had an interesting problem that I created for myself as a part of teaching because I teach Zettelkasten. And so I would create cards that had pedagogic value. And I would give them, pedagogic numbering, but then find that, but wait a minute, I want that card. Now I have to incorporate it back into my Zettelkasten. So that just became a discipline thing. And okay, I don't renumber cards unless you gave them numbers for pedagogic purposes, in which case, yes, renumber them to fit in your Zettelkasten. But I had a big problem that I created for myself with my minimalist series. I created an entire minimalist Zettelkasten. And then I had all kinds of stuff, thick stuff that I really, really wanted to have in my main box. So I found I was having these big clumps of cards with, bullnose clips around them that plunked into my drawers that someday I'm going to integrate these back in. And of course, someday was never coming because when are you going to have time to do that big of a job? So what I did just this morning, and because it's on practice as I'll share it, what I did was I took all of the cards and I intersorted them with my existing cards. I haven't got the right numbers on them, but where I just put little, what I did was I just wrapped them in Post-it notes. And so now they're little clumps. And now I can do a little clump whenever I've got a moment, or whenever I need to break into this to file another card, gotta clean this one up. And then it also keeps the cards together so that if I do have something that fits in there, I've got all my latest thinking right in that same spot. So it's another case of retrofitting. And if this works, when I get those all cleaned up, The next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to take my horrific, getting ridiculously large rumination box or whatever incubation box, whatever you want to call it, and do the same with those. Sort them into where they're going to go and just clump them in, and so that at least they're near where they're going to be.
I have done that. That last bit. So this is my incubation box, and it's got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, just dividers. And for the most part right now, those are referring to sections of the Roanoke story. So section 1, so Roanoke is project 5. So 5.1 are where characters are. And so right now this 1 is serving as a repository for unfiled character cards. But I at least know that when I start peeling into here, there's been that little bit of triage done so that I'm not context switching all over the world.
Well, that actually is a fairly good segue to our second question, which is based off of a question that my husband posed, because he also keeps his Zettelkasten, but he is less rigorous than we are. He's not as interested in indexing. He's a little bit scared by it. So we've been working on that. But one thing that he was wondering was, if you have multiple different areas of interest and they have different terminology, how do you find the connections between them if that doesn't immediately appear to you to your mind? Like, are there any strategies that you can use to make it more likely that you'll find connections between areas that have different terminology? Because if they have different terminology, then it seems like they'd be less likely to connect in the index because you'd be using different words. But maybe you're talking about the same thing underlying it. So do any of you have any strategies for dealing with that problem, or promoting connections between subjects that are very different?
Well, I don't mind going,
Go ahead.
as I didn't have to come up with an original answer for that one. Mortimer Adler took care of that for me. He talks about, of course, I always show in my courses, I have a bib card on a ring for Mortimer Adler. So I have all of his notes on how to read a book are on a ring. And then I've got these little tabs so that I can go directly to the section that I'm interested in. Well, what we're talking about here, when you're talking about reading different sources on the same topic, you're talking about something Mortimer Adler calls syntopic reading. And syntopic reading has a very important action step. If you Analytical reading has the action step where you need to come to terms with the author. And that means you need to identify the terms that the author uses, and you need to understand what those terms mean and how the author is going to work with them. So this is that problem of, okay, he's off in this direction. Well, then if you come to terms with the next author, it's off in the other direction. Exactly the problem that was posed. Well, when you're doing syntopic reading, you are the principal author. It's what you are creating, you are assembling, that is the organizing factor. And so instead of coming to terms with the author, you're bringing the authors to terms with you. And that means you've already laid out the terms that you're going to use and the definitions you're going to give to them. Now you're researching in this book, because you're reading syntopically, you're reading into your Zettelkasten from multiple sources. And that's one of the great beauties of a Zettelkasten, is that you can read, you don't have to lay all the books out at the same time. You can read them one at a time into your Zettelkasten. So now you've read this new book and you've got your term and he's got his. Well, you're reading his book right now. You look at that term, and once you understand that term, you say, "Why, that's what I call this." And so you bring him to your terms. You file that card in under your term. You note his term so that you can have the translation between them, but you bring his term into your spot. Then when you read that other source that uses yet another term for it, you bring him into your term. Now, guess what? All three terms are sitting together on the same directory card. And your problem is solved. And not only that, the whole reason for reading syntopically is happening. You're interacting those ideas, and now they're speaking the same language. You're the interpreter. Now you've got, two different philosophers of different centuries, maybe a millennium apart, are now talking to each other because you made them use the same terms that you're using. So I didn't have to make that one up.
So I think I certainly intend to do all of that. And I think syntopic reading is the way I'm going to get the most out of these sources for Roanoke, for example. I've got my own proposition for what's believable about the world or about the way the characters interact with it. And then I'm going to essentially be looking for some substantive support for that. Doesn't have to be proof that this could be true, but it's more like lack of proof that it's utterly crazy. So I look forward to doing that. But I think how do I find cards that don't use the same terms? And I feel like that is just one of the, if I think of Mel, your figure T, Llull's figure T, there are these different ways that you're analyzing a problem, and it gives you these different perspectives. And I'm sure that every one of us is going to find some of those perspectives is like, well, I do that all the time, and others will be new. And I feel like subconsciously, I've got some little process that's saying, how's this like everything else that I know?
Mm.
Or everything else that I've been thinking about recently. And there, so those connections of how's this like, it's, I don't necessarily start with how's this like that. It's more like, what's this like?
Wow.
And a little search comes on, and it happens, I would say, subconsciously. And then I just get a little zing of, ooh, that's like this. And sometimes I go completely off the rails and it's crazy. But other times it holds water.
Well, my answer to this, at least as far as I've gotten in my own practice, is to it's like what Kathleen says, in that when you find something that's interesting that you want to put into the Zettelkasten in the first place, it's probably interesting because it applies to some more abstract idea that you're working with. And so I try to include a reference to this higher level of what the thing is actually about, in addition to the specific terms that would help me find that thing again. So to get into more detail here, with a specific example, a couple of episodes ago, I pulled out what had just been an external reference in regards to mnemonic medicine. And I actually made a full card for that because I didn't want it to get lost. And so when I was going to place this card in my Zettelkasten and index it properly, so my tagline was mnemonic medicine using memory to heal, question mark. And so I was looking, I have a whole section on memory. It could have gone in, but nothing there was really, it wasn't necessarily, memory was not the overarching thing that was most exciting about this. But when I looked under heal, I found a card that had the keyword health. And it was a completely different subject, but it fit very well. It was a quote that I had written down from Wendell Berry from one of his essays that was entitled Health is Membership. And his quote was all about how health and holiness and wholeness all come from the same root word. And so you need to have a life that is whole in order to be healthy. And I see that as fitting in very well with this concept of mnemonic medicine, in that, you could use these images theoretically. I don't know how this works out in the medieval times, but I'm imagining that it's using images that you can meditate on to make your life more whole and to be more healthy. So that's where it ended up being filed. I had completely forgotten I had read that essay and put anything about it in the Zettelkasten, and it's certainly a very different subject area. Wendell Berry writes about, like farming and sustainable agriculture and living in community, and so it's all very interesting to me, but it's very different from medieval medicine. Um, but because of that connection of health, I was able to find them and put them together.
Mhm. I love it. It's one
Yeah.
of the joys of a Zettelkasten. And then you
Yes.
never know what's going to blossom in that under that association.
Hmm. I think the
You're
other
not
thing,
necessarily also going to find every single possible connection.
mhm, for sure.
And maybe you can't even deal with all of them at the same time. It could be that there's a lot that's hiding in every one of our Zettelkastens that is going to emerge at the right time.
Mm. Oh, I like that. I like that.
Yes. Yes. And I think that reviewing, either deliberately reviewing things that are in there or just reviewing them as they come up in other contexts, can help spark those connections when it's the right time to make them. Um, I will be talking about this more in my own video later on today, hopefully. But just this morning, I had a lyric from a song running through my head, and it sparked this connection of how Ramon Llull fits in with computer science, modern computer science. And so, you know, just something as random as lyrics running through your head can spark an amazing connection. Um,
Oh,
so yeah,
I'd
very.
be interested in what you write about Ramon Llull and modern computer science.
Yeah.
Well, that's what I'm planning to do for my topic of the video today. So, uh,
Oh, can't wait, can't wait. So, well, and for any of you who are over on Lily be sure to check out the library. Deb Hart isn't able to be with us today, but she put a fascinating post to an interview that Mel also mentioned in his newsletter. Grab it. No, I might not be able to grab it. Oh, there it is. On an interview with Michael Dean, there's a wonderful video about his system on the architecture of the essay. And Mel wrote a wonderful piece. Do you want to tell us a little bit about the piece that you wrote on this and how you produced this diagram?
sure. Well, Michael Dean is working to systematize essay analysis. Basically, he's come up with 27 different elements that you can look at in terms of writing an essay and producing a good essay. Um, and we don't have any connection other than Deb had pointed out his work, and I found it very interesting. But what immediately jumped out to me was the fact that he has 27 elements, which is 3 cubed. And in fact, the way he gets those 27 elements is by dividing the essay into 3 parts, and then each of those 3 parts into 3, and then dividing into 3 again, which is exactly what Ramon Llull does in Figure T. So I set out to create a Figure T version of his essay architecture, um, which I shared with Michael, and he was interested in it. He's very busy, so I don't think we haven't really had much of a conversation about it. But he, I haven't had a chance to actually watch this interview yet. This was new to me. But he had mentioned to me that he had come up with a number of new diagrams himself that were not in his first articles on the subject. And I believe that a lot of those are in that video. So I'm really looking forward to being able to see that. But yeah, I mean, my putting it into a Lullian system is definitely an offshoot, not at all what Michael's doing, but I just see how it could be an implementation, a specific implementation of the Lullian art towards essay writing, if that was something that somebody wanted to do with it. So,
Yeah, I'm liking it because of course, my area of interest is the character traits. And so I've already created, well, thanks to you, you gave me an invitation. I created a figure A to analyze the character traits to make sure I covered everything. But I want to make a figure T as well. And so I'm comparing your exposition of Llull with your exposition of Dean to see what changed and how did the migration take place, to see if I can then construct a figure T for the character traits.
mhm.
So I have 28 character traits taught in 27 lessons because two of them are so close. Even though they're distinct, they have to be discussed together. So I've got the 27 going, but they're not 3 of 3 of 3. They're more like Fibonacci numbers.
Mhm.
So it almost feels like they're going to make a spiral.
That could be fun too. That could be a very interesting development. Well, since there's just the three of us today, I guess we are about done unless anybody has any final thoughts that they'd like to say. Have you shown your card yet for Lilypub, Kathleen?
I don't think so.
Thank you, Mel. Yes, come join us over in lilypub.org. We have a number of areas that you might be interested in. Mel's newsletter group meets over in Lilypub. Fusion Writing meets in Lilypub. We have a circle for Zettelkasten in Lilypub. And most of all, the Roanoke Project is in Lilypub. You can come join us and follow along more closely with what we are doing. And if you just want to sign up for updates on the Roanoke Project, lilypub.org will help you do that as well. So consider joining us, and we'd love to see you over there.
Thank you, Kathleen.
Indeed.
All right. And
All right.
Kathleen, are you hosting next week?
I thought it was Victoria.
Was it Victoria? It was Victoria. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Well,
Okay.
it's been a wonderful
Bye-bye.
episode. Bye-bye.
Bye.